You got a little taste of South America yesterday with Brian Forrester's lecture when he was describing the skulls and some of the sites that these skulls came from. Now, I was obviously with Brian last November in Peru. We did our annual Megalithomania tour there. And I'm going to show you some slides around Peru, but because Brian's going to do his talk on Monday night, he's going to go into it in more detail. But I stayed on in Peru, in South America, for an extra few weeks, and I visited some other more obscure sites there, a place called Chavin de Junta, and I also flew down to Colombia as well. I went to San Agustin and Bogota, and so the main bulk of this talk is going to be exploring the sites there because they're not really as well known, but they're equally as fascinating and all rather megalithic as well. And you'll see connections pop up in these places relating to Easter Island and even Europe, which surprised me somewhat when I arrived there. So this is the kind of area, the top arrow here, this is kind of roughly the area, and all of these different, Ecuador, Colombia, Peru. And this red line we're going to get more into as we go along. This is what I believe is the path of a particular earth energy current that goes all the way around the world called the Plume Serpent, which links up and connects with the Rainbow Serpent energy current in Lake Titicaca in Peru. And we'll have a look at these because a lot of you might be realize that they're actually, the Rainbow Serpent is potentially the extension of the Michael and Mary lines all around the planet. But I just want to give you some examples of some of the stonework, some of the sites in Peru and Bolivia. This is the Temple of Fertility. This is just around the edge of Lake Titicaca near a town called Puno. And this is quite a small temple site, but it's got a very powerful, 2 or 3 energy currents going through it. But you can immediately see the stonework. It's like of a polygonal nature, and it's beautifully cut and pieced together. And this is something you get all over, different parts of South America, and around different parts of the world. And I've got a few examples of the global connections here. This is what's inside the temple. This is why they call it a fertility temple. However, Jonathan and I and several others went there, trying to deal with the altitude. And to be honest with you, they look more like mushrooms than they do anything phallic when you get up close. And so these look remarkably like Psilocybin mushrooms, or what we call magic mushrooms in England. And you do get these in this part of the world and in Mexico. And so this kind of intrigued me because this, they always call it a fertility temple, but I believe it may have been a mushroom temple. When you actually look at these here, and you can see some of the stonework in the background and how it's all sort of put together in this sort of, almost like a childlike fashion, this polygonal fashion. Here's our filmmaker Jonathan balancing on one leg at a place called Sillustani. And you can again see the sheer size of some of these stones here and the way they're put together. Sillustani is more famous for its kind of round towers. I don't have any photos in this particular slideshow, but I'm sure Brian will be showing some tomorrow night. And the whole site there, again, is right around the edge of Lake Titicaca, which is one of the highest lakes in the world, and possibly one of the largest. It's almost like a sea when you're kind of looking over it. You can't see any land on the other side of it. It's that large. And I'm just going to give you a few more examples around this part of the world. We're jumping over to Tiahuanaco and Puma Punku here. Now these are the more famous sites. There was even a whole TV program about it made by Ancient Aliens that covered just Puma Punku. I think it's that important. There's 2 sites there. There's Tiahuanaco, which is the famous site with the Acapana pyramid. But Puma Punku has these huge blocks here. I don't know if you can really see what size these are, but some of them, weigh well over 100, possibly 200 tons. There's been estimates of 400 tons, but I think that might be a bit exaggerated. But it's completely crumbled. It's almost like it's been deliberately destroyed, whoever built it. But there's been a lot going on at Tiahuanaco and Puma Punku because, number one, it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no reason why it would be there. But what's most important is that it became a thriving metropolis, and there's evidence of this. And they had really high success of growing food, even in the barren sort of area that it is. And the reason they were able to do that is because it's now thought now actually being scientifically tested by the BLT research team, John Burke and others, that they used, they compressed and pushed water through different sort of sluice gates throughout the whole area. It's also on a fault line. There's a fault line that goes very close to it, and there's two different types of geology meet underneath Tiahuanaco and Puma Punku, very close to it. And it used to be right next to the lake Titicaca, but now obviously it's several miles away because they think the land mass has shifted around even since it was built. And the dating of it's quite interesting as well, because Arthur Poznansky, who studied Tiahuanaco and Puma Punku for about 40 or 50 years, believes he dated it back through archaeoastronomy all the way back to about 17,000 years ago. So that would put the dating back very, very earlier than even, Göbekli Tepe and other sites like that. But what interested me about this site, I'm not going to show you a picture of every single stone there. I just want to show you a couple of examples. But look, this is a kind of spiral. I mean, I kept finding these in different parts of South America and in, obviously, different parts of the world. But you can see this perfect spiral. And then these kind of, I personally think this is a symbol of earth energies, a sort of sign of the serpent people when they were building these sites and working and harnessing these particular energies. And if you go into the Tiahuanaco Museum, you're not allowed into this bit anymore for some reason. But I managed to get to have a look at it. I couldn't get my camera in there, but there's a beautifully carved large block of stone with a double spiral, just like the ones you get in Cornwall and in Newgrange Island and Malta and other places in Tiahuanaco. And you get it in New Zealand as well. And so there seems to be these global symbols that keep popping up everywhere. And here's another one. This is actually like a serpent, which is kind of carved into the stone here and some other bits here. So whether these were later additions or whether these were like the signatures of the builders, we don't really know. But we'll come back to this because the serpent god of this part of the world was called Viracocha, which means plume serpent or feathered serpent. And he seems to be popped back into almost every site and every legend of this part of the world, as a very similar god does in Mexico and Guatemala, called Quetzalcoatl or Cucuclan. More examples of the stonework. This is in the Coricancha. This is in Cuzco. What interests me is that this clamp, this sort of space for a metal clamp, you find in lots of different places, all over South America, obviously. You get it in Mexico, you get it in Egypt, you even get it in Rome and other places, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and pretty much all over the world. And again, these are like extremely hard kind of rock to be carving this kind of thing. And obviously they must have had some kind of smelting device to kind of pour the molten metal in. And it's thought that these were just to hold the stones together. But if they use certain types of metal, i.e. copper, they become conductive and they actually kind of allow energies to move through the stones much more effectively. And this is something that again was tested by John Burke. And these are all around in Tiahuanaco and Puma Punku, where it's believed now that they were working with these energies, whether they were using it for electricity or consciousness altering or fertility to enhance the seeds. They're probably all possibilities, and there were probably all those reasons why they were using it. This is just a aerial view. I had to jump very high to get this photo. But you can see these like nodules here kind of on top, and very unusual, perfectly cut stone, absolutely precision. And these are all at the lower levels you get in Cuzco and all over South America. And I was absolutely fascinated. Being a megalithomaniac, you get fascinated by any stone that's bigger than a few of you could carry. So it's going to keep me busy, I think, for the next few lifetimes. But you can just see that, again, the precision here. This is what kind of gets me. All over, you get this high precision in Peru. This is something that Brian mentioned yesterday. He's going to talk about tomorrow night.